Brilliant, just to put us on stage. Martin's an admirer, among other things, of Samuel Beckett, and I felt we were about to begin a kind of production of Krapp's last tapes. Anyway, as Gemma said, one of the reasons for being here, I mean, the main reason is because Martin's a figure that I want to interrogate publicly, but is the publication of this book, Martin. And I'm not doing this as a plug, but it is your entire career to date, if not quite in its entirety, pretty close to it. And therefore it means that you've been spending the last few months or years looking back over your career to date. Do you have a sense, looking at it, of a kind of coherent evolution?
I don't know. Not really. Not really. Maybe. I don't know. But I think that I find it hard to look at it.
Because?
Because a lot of those works were not done on paper. So to see them on paper with a frame around them, that being the edge of the paper, is hard. I find that, I think, oh God. So, so I think that's not, I think it's, well, it's like, you had, sometimes I think, oh, you had to be there,
Well, you describe in, I think, one of the more memorable introductions I've read to an artist describing his own career to date, the experience of doing it is like having a cat having its nose rubbed in its own shit. You also say that art is shit, that art gallerists are like, I think, toilet room attendants, that curators are, artists are bullshitters, no, maybe curators are like toilet room attendants, I can't remember, which seemed pretty disillusioned, really, with the whole art scene. Have you become more disillusioned as you've progressed?
I didn't mean it in that way. I didn't really.
I'm quite sad to hear that you didn't mean it.
Well, I didn't mean it in a disillusioned way, really.
In a slightly sceptical or cynical way, though.
Well, I think art. I think that shit is. Shit's what people make, and art is what people make. So it's not. I think it's not so. And I think that the things people make, which is what might be called art, is the stuff that comes out of. It's what comes out of you, and since shit is the most simple, basic thing that comes out of you, that's what got me to thinking that art galleries are like toilets. And they're also like toilets because they're generally very brightly lit and white, often white. So, and that's probably not by accident that toilets and art galleries look the same.
So for you, the creative process is akin to a form of kind of cathartic or biological expression. I mean, you have done pieces that involve shitting.
I think that I would think of it, if I had to think of it, I would think of it as being like, that living and working, and I don't think you can separate the two, is a matter of trying to deal with yourself, trying to cope with what comes out of you. So it's not, and living and working is a matter of trying to feel better, and that's what I think and feel, and so I would say that that's probably that's what makes me work, but I don't know, but the work itself and what that might mean or do, I don't know. I don't know about that.
Was there a moment in your life when you thought, I want to be an artist, or was it just a slow evolution through art school and thinking, this is what I'm going to do?
No, when I was a teenager, I remember I got in. Well, there was when I was a teenager. When I was a kid, before I was a teenager, when we used to go to a lot of art galleries. My parents took me and my brother to a lot of art galleries.
This was in Wakefield or in Glasgow?
Well, I remember galleries in Glasgow, but because we moved to Glasgow when I was 3. But my mum was German. Is German. She still is German. And we went to Germany a lot when I was growing up, and that's where I remember going to art galleries, because there are lots of modern art galleries, and so so it was always and I think my dad used to always say, that art is like good,
So do you remember the first piece of art that you thought, yeah, wow? I mean, what was the first piece of art that had an impact on you?
Oh God, I don't know. It's probably things that were around the house. I remember like Paul Klee posters of Paul Klee work, and
not Salvador Dali, St. John of the
I
Cross.
remember that.
That was in the Kelvin Grove Galleries.
Yeah.
So, in a sense, if your parents were taking you to art galleries and your dad was giving you the sense that art was good or good for you, becoming an artist wasn't a rebellious act?
No, I don't think so.
So, is there a sense?
But when I was a teenager, I got really into what I liked at school was English and art, and then when I was thinking of going to university, I thought of maybe studying English or psychology. I used to read loads of books on psychology when I was a teenager. So that was another thing that I was interested in, and also architecture and art. But then in the end, I thought that those other ones all seemed like narrower subjects, whereas art could be basically anything. And in other words, art to study art means that could contain all those different. And I didn't know what I wanted to study, so that seemed like the best. That seemed like the best thing because it could have everything in it.
Yeah, and without being reductive, but I'm going to be, you could argue that there's elements of your architectural interest in the way that you stage and play with space. You could say there's elements of, there's text-based work. I mean, you write, but also I'm quite interested that you're interested in psychology. Do you seek a psychological charge explicitly in some of your pieces? Do you think about the impact it will have on people, or is it much more personal than that and less predetermined?
Well, I think it's not so predetermined because I just don't know what anything, I don't know what it feels like to be someone else, so I can't make something for someone else. So I can just, use myself as an example.
You don't empathize then in that way? That's not part of the way you proceed?
No, I don't know. I think that working is, I think that work, making things is I want people to like me. So that's something that I do. You
do want people to?
Yeah,
like
I do.
you.
Very much.
So you care what people think about what you produce?
Yeah. I want to. It's like I work to feel better. And part of feeling, and if people like me, that makes me feel better. So that's definitely part of what I'm trying to do. No work, but I can't control other people, much as I, wish I could. And So, you know, I don't know. So I think working is trying to be nice.
Let's try and nail down the process of working for you. I mean, that's a broad question in a sense, because your work has embraced all sorts of different media or processes. But are you someone for whom, I mean, I get the impression that you're someone for whom art can appear and manifest itself potentially anywhere. But do you have a studio ever that you're conventionally in, working through ideas? Or is your studio the studio without walls, you're always thinking and making?
No, I don't really have a studio. I have an office where for the kind of administration, but I did try having a studio and I didn't. I was really sure when I was younger. I was really sure that I didn't want to have a studio because all the people I knew that had studios, it was all like really cold and wet, you know, and damp, and I liked just living at home and working at home. I mean, I like living with what I do partly because I don't know what it is that I do. So to have a studio over there, seems silly because what would I do in that studio? I mean, to me, a studio needs to have a bed and a shower and a kitchen in it, so it may as well be my flat, you know.
And do you?
Because I don't know how I work. You know, I really don't know. Oh, I don't know how anyone works. I mean, I don't know how anyone does anything. You know.
But do you tend to? I mean, do you tend to make? That's the way that you proceed, or are you someone who will jot down numerous ideas and then think, okay, yeah, I'll try and realise that one, or that's the one I'm going to do?
I do. I make a lot of notes in a notebook that I carry around with me. So a lot of notes, and then I sometimes have a tape machine, like a dictaphone thing, that I sometimes, and then but I don't. But I always think I should look through my notebook, and you know, I always think, I should look through my notebooks and you know, and try and find, you know, like pare down the ideas into, you know, but I don't seem to do that much.
You mean?
So I write things in my notebook, but
then it's lodged in your brain anyway, so you don't.
I don't really. Sometimes when I look back through notebooks, usually the things that get realised are often in the notebook quite a number of times. Like I forget about it and then write it down again. So it seems like the things that get made or worked on are the ones. That's what I mean about. I think it's necessary for me to live. Anytime I've ever kind of forced work, like it seems like often not as good. So if I live with it a bit, and then the thing that feels okay still after a while, you know, like so the thing that you you can be bothered to get up in the morning to do, you know, is a, you know, it would seem to I think is a good thing to, you know, work on.
So you make plenty of work that you think, no, that doesn't work, and you leave it. You don't realise it's destroyed. You don't show it.
Or I start things and then, you know, and then I think, I'm kidding myself about this. It's not really, you know, doesn't feel right. I think it's to do with feeling about it, but it's got a lot to do with other people as well. You know, I think.
Go on.
Well, you know, I think that the more I work, the more I think that I need to try things out in public to find out about them. So and that's why I think that's why I want to do shows, is to try things out. You know, and so that's how that's the way I think about an exhibition, is try, you know, and a chance to try out what work, and you know, and that'd be also because I feel like I don't know about things until they're in public. Don't know how they work, you know. Don't know how to think about them. It's like, you know, I think it's, you know, because it's really easy to kid yourself. I think, you know, so if I'm at home, I can, you know, control my own environment, and I can kind of have my little thoughts and think, oh yeah, that's nice, you know, and feel happy and make a cup of tea and have biscuits and a sofa, and watch TV and then go, but then I might, let's say I'm writing some things, and then, maybe I would be writing something to say tonight, but as soon as I get here, it's all like, oh fuck, it's like, it's not the same as being in my room, and everything's different, and I feel differently about things when I'm with other people. And so that's the way. So I think that's what I should do more. Work more in public.
How do you? Sorry. No, go on. I'd rather.
Well, I know. I just was thinking, because I think I used to think it was a matter of preparing things in private, carefully, and then presenting them. And now I don't think really that it's so much like that. It's more a matter of, doing a bit of working out of what you might do, and then just trying to more like trying to present the making of the thing kind of live in some way or other.
What's the most effective work you think you've made then on those terms? You mean in the terms of just
public
realization and thinking, actually, this is validated by the public response to it, and I now. Well, I think it goes for all. I think it goes for everything. I think that it really does go for everything. Do you have a hierarchy, though, in your mind of certain works that seem to you more significant or fertile in terms of the ideas that they've generated for you, or in terms of what is resolved, than others? Or do you really believe that all works have a kind of equality in your career? Well, I think. Well. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, I think what works that maybe a lot of people have seen, or have been in the press a lot and things like that, or have been shown a lot because for some reason or other people want to do that. Like the lights going on and off, for example. That's one of my. I like that one. So I suppose it's one of my favourite ones. Interesting to see, there are works of yours that you've become both celebrated and notorious for that you kind of almost have grown tired of. No, not really. No. I mean, I get tired. Well, I get, I get very, I don't really look at my work, that much, Till you have to do a book. Aye, I mean, that's what I found really hard about doing that, was having to look at all that stuff, I don't have work up on the walls, really. And when you were at art school in the mid to late 80s at the Slade, what was the kind of ethos of the place as far as you were concerned? I mean, the Slade is a very interesting school because it has both a reputation for a kind of traditional Coldstreamian painting ethic, and then at the same time, artists like yourself, Douglas Gordon, Rachel Whiteread, through that decade came out of there, and Bruce McLean was kind of inspiration to myself, John Aitken for others. But for you, what was the ethos of the place, and what did you gain from being at the Slade? I mean, was it a positive thing or a negative thing that you reacted against? Well, I was part of that very traditional studio at first, and because I came straight from school, so I just got my portfolio was kind of like still lives and so I went into that studio, but then the teachers there I was a bit unhappy there because it wasn't very sociable, and it was all just painting from life, and so then I went into this other part of the school. But I kind of found all the teachers really helpful throughout, also in the kind of traditional part. And but I think I was quite inspired by Bruce McLean and Tess Jarry, who was my own tutor, and Tim Head.
And I always remember the advice that Bruce McLean used to give everybody, which was make it bigger. He used to say to everyone, whatever they were doing, make it bigger.
Which is not advice you've taken.
I kind of made it smaller. but you know, I think the advice that whatever you're doing, do it more, you know, in a more exaggerated way is good. You know, that sounds like that's something I think. Oh, that's what I should try and do. Try and work out what it is I want to do, and then do it in the most extreme way, you know, and try and cut out anything that I think is superfluous.
Did the Slade specifically, but that kind of artistic culture in general, did it give you permission to do whatever you wanted?
Yeah.
And that's liberating, or was that daunting? You know, an open door, a void, and anything being possible or anything.
Oh no, I liked that. And Bruce McLean and his students were always doing these kind of like what they called operas, or like stuff with weird, kind of things happening, kind of performance type things. And there was no, there was no pressure to do. You could do what you wanted. Really. So, but I remember when I left art school, I was really I didn't want to do postgraduate. I wanted to be, you know, in the world kind of thing. So, you know, I don't know.
When did you feel that you? So by the time you left art school, you felt that you had some kind of artistic language that was your own. You could see a way forward. You were certain to a certain extent of who you were as an artist. Is that fair to say? Or do you not still feel fully formed as an artist? I mean, it's an interesting idea.
No, I don't. No, I felt really unsure. I felt really unsure of myself and unconfident. You know. I mean, I think that's why I liked my teachers, because they helped give me, you know, confidence. But I still felt. But I knew that's what I wanted to do. I mean, I knew that I didn't want to have a job. You know. So there's no. So I was on the dole, and I just did not. I mean, there was like no question of you know, like kind of getting a proper job type thing. I just wanted to work on my work and smoke, which is what I did. So smoking I found really, really helpful. You know, even when I had, because you know, when you've got no money, you know, as long as you can smoke. That's what I used to think.
The labelling of you by people, I mean, it's to call you a conceptual artist is both loaded, but actually it's quite meaningless too, in a sense. But I'm curious as to how you ever felt. I mean, did you feel the need to define yourself in those terms, or did you resent the labelling conceptual art? Is it a significant enough catch-all? And were you in any way looking explicitly at that kind of tradition from the 60s and 70s and actually trying to extend and play with it?
Well,
yes, no, yes, I suppose the answer's about 8 questions in there, but you get the territory.
I don't believe in conceptual art at all. I don't think, because I think that, you know, because I think you cannot separate ideas and feelings. So ideas from feelings, you know, and I think I make my work much more because of feelings than because of ideas, you know. So although, yeah, so I think that conceptual art's a bit of a. So I wouldn't call myself a conceptual artist.
So you're an expressionist of sorts?
Aye, that's what I would call myself, yeah.
With a small e, perhaps?
Or a big E.
To say that a work of art requires a feeling, I think that's kind of a powerful idea. Is the feeling always recognisable for you? Is it, if not categorisable, can you articulate it verbally most of the time? Or is the work, by definition, always the articulation of a sometimes almost unknowable feeling? I mean, you know it's there, but you can't determine what it is.
I think that, I think you can't know what it is, and you don't know. And I think it's, I mean, the more I work, the more I think that I don't know what I'm doing, you know. And you can kid yourself that you do know, but I think I think the best way to work is to take some time, and then, you know, and then the next year you might look back and see. It's a matter of trying things out and seeing what kind of works a bit over time. But yeah, I think that you can't know what you're doing, you know. But I think it's like that, you know. I think with kind of, you know, I think that feelings come up and thoughts go down, and you know, and then and it's kind of like ideas and thoughts are kind of a way of, I think, are a way of trying to cope with feelings, you know. And but I think a lot of these works are called conceptual art often because there's a lot of words in them. Because a lot of them can be described using words, or even are described using words within the work, you know. And so then it seems like it, you know. But I don't think it's really. So I can understand why, you know, the kind of conceptual art thing. But to me, it's not different from, you know, a painter that goes like that, you know.
Do you see all of Rembrandt? I think famously the only quote attributed to him is that he said that all his works ultimately were self-portraits. I mean, you have made explicit self-portraits, but do you see a lot of your work as being a form of self-portraiture, or am I conflating the idea of the self in art with your notion of feeling? That, you know, that therefore I'm seeing it as an expression of personal feeling too much.
Well, I would say that everyone's work is, like, you know, is obviously everything that everyone does is an expression of themselves. So and therefore I would say that, you know, everything that everyone does is a self-portrait. You know, you give yourself away all the time. But you know, but I wouldn't think of it overtly like that. Except that whenever I do something, I always think I'm responsible for this. You know, I have to take responsibility for this. So whatever it is I say or do, I think, you know, I've got to live with this for the rest of my life. So I want to make sure that I'm happy with it. That, you know, that's kind of the way that I proceed. I think, you know, so every decision is like, can I live with that really, or is that slightly, you know?
Okay, so but there are certain instances where, for example, you do a series of portraits of people smiling, but also you've done a self-portrait smiling. Now, to my knowledge, and you can tell me I'm wrong, that would be very fascinating actually, the films of people shitting, you haven't included yourself in that. Why not? I mean, because if you're talking about art as an extreme, or not even necessarily an extreme manifestation of personal expression, and that, you know, defecation is one of those kind of bodily functions where there is a parallel, it would be in some ways logical and quite loaded to have yourself shitting or fucking or vomiting, being sick, which are subjects physically that you've dealt with in your art. Why? Where does the boundaries of you getting involved in your work stop in those instances? Was it too loaded to have you doing those activities?
No, I didn't do the vomiting or the shitting just because I couldn't. You know, I just thought there's no way I can, and there's no way I could do the vomiting and direct the movie at the same time. But I just thought I couldn't do it. I wanted to do it, and I wanted to shit in front of the camera, but there's just no way I could have done it. I couldn't have brought
practically
myself
or
to do it.
physiologically. I mean, physically.
I know, you know,
or emotionally.
It just was, you know. Just was too uptight. And so, but also when it comes to the work, I don't. Maybe those self-portraits were, you know, mistakes, bad. Maybe they're bad, you know, narcissistic works. But because I think that whether I'm in it or not is not the, you know, usually, mostly in the case of something, you know, with the exception if it's sort of a self-portrait, but in those works like the sick, or, I mean, I could be in it or not in it, but the fact whether I'm in it or not is not the, I don't think that would make it, you know, it might be, you know, some small interest for, you know, for someone, because, you know, it's like if you see the director walking through the film, I mean, that might have some interest in a small way, but not, it doesn't really make the film better, necessarily, you know. So I wouldn't, so whether or not I'm in those films is not the, I think is not, that's what I've been thinking lately.
Does that mean that, I mean, there is a performative aspect of what you do. I mean, music in particular. You know, you performed in a band. You did it here recently. Previously, a wider now Martin Creed's band. Is there a sense that in the end you'll remove yourself from that and direct, or is that performative element a separate thing from the way you conceive of the art that you make?
Well, so, you know, some of the music things I've been working on have been with orchestras and other. So in that, and I thought that, and I worry, you know, when I play with a band, you know, I sometimes I get quite self-conscious and think, oh God, it's like, you know, like I can't. It's like, you know, I care about the way I look and stuff, and you know, and that can get in the way of maybe sometimes of making the work. That's my worry. But the thing about doing performances or being in it, you know, when I do the music and also the ballet thing, which is kind of like talk and dance and music together. The thing about that is that to me that more like is a chance to work on things live in the kind of way that I was talking about. Trying to talk about earlier, like doing things live to try and work on them, and if it's possible to think out loud and work like that as part of a show, that's what that is what I've been trying to do.
Do you? I wouldn't call you a control freak, but there is a wonderful order about a lot of what you produce. I mean, your career to date, the works are numbered, you know, beginning in the early 90s. I mean, you started numbering retrospectively, you back to 86. A lot of what you do is involve sort of stacking or ordering. Have you always been sort of intellectually and physically an ordered sort of a person? Is that a compulsion of yours?
I think it is probably a compulsion. But I don't. And I think but I try to not. I mean, I don't like being trying to control things.
You want to
drives me crazy.
But that is your compulsion. You want to let things go, see where it goes, but then you want to bring some kind of order back.
I mean, I want to be more free. I need to go to the toilet actually.
Right now, feel free. We could produce a kind of piece here.
Because I don't think I can wait. But I'll go back there as a toilet.
Fine. Well, and I'll just fill in for 5 minutes. It's fine. We can do that, or we'll put your website up. I'm curious about the way you perceive your cultural identity. I have a feeling you're not that bothered, but you know, you were born in England, but you grew up in Scotland. You, at the beginning of the last decade, 2001, I think, moved at least part of the time to Italy, to an island off Sicily, Ale Cudi. Do you have a sense still of feeling predominantly a Scottish artist, or Scottish is your culture, or has your own cultural identity fragmented much more in the last decade or so?
I think that I do. Yeah, I feel Scottish, and I know the reason I know that is because, or the reason I think I know that is because I went recently. I did a lot of work in Scotland, and I hadn't been. I'd never. Just this year, I did 2 shows in Scotland and ballet as well, and I realised I'd never really done a show in Scotland. And then I thought, oh yeah. And then when I was there, I thought, oh yeah, now I understand why. Because when I'm in Scotland, I feel like I'm only like half a person. Because it's as if it feels like that, because I'm Scottish, so in Scotland they're not impressed by the fact that I'm Scottish.
So it subsumes half your identity. If not more.
So I'm like saying things to them, and they're like, oh yeah, I was already, it's like, yeah, I was already thinking that, it's like, like they're like me, and that's exactly why I don't want to go to Scotland. But because but I think that I think if you want to stand out, you need to go somewhere where people aren't like you.
So that was the motivation to go to Alicudi, to go to an island.
Well, because I moved to London, and when you're in London, if you're Scottish in London, London's full of people from everywhere else, but certainly it's not like the main thing. But after I was in London for a while, I think I became part of
an art scene.
So then I moved to Italy. But
not just anywhere in Italy. I mean, somewhere that was fairly remote. Why?
I don't know. But as a I must have been I think it must have been a reaction to living in the big city. And
what did you do? Just fly down to Sicily and think, I've never been here before, or had you been there?
I saw it. I saw this island in a film called Dear Diary, by Nanni Moretti, which is a really it's a really nice film. It's really funny. And in this film, he goes to these islands off Sicily. He's looking for peace and quiet, and eventually he finds this kind of peace and quiet. He's looking for. He's like in the film. He's like trying to write the film. It's kind of like a film about. He's trying to write the film, and he eventually finds this peace and quiet on this island called Alicudi, which is a really small one of the islands. And I saw that, and that's what made me go there on holiday. And then I liked it. And then, since I didn't have to really be living, and I was with someone who's from Italy, and so we kind of rented out a place there, and then eventually bought a house. But I think I wanted, some peace and quiet kind of thing.
So how have you used, maybe utilization is the wrong term, but how has that impacted on the routine of the rhythms of your work? Do you make yourself, well, it wouldn't be too arduous, would it, but do you go there for a certain period each year? Do you find that's a place that is reassuring because it's in your mind, you can go there and you don't go that often, or is there something kind of immersive about it where you have to keep going back?
Well, it's kind of both. It's nice to know that I have that place there, which is so out of the way, and where there's no kind of art world as well. That's what I like about that place, is that if you're working on something, you don't. It's not. It's not. There's no art world. No one's impressed by that, and I think it's really good to try and make work for not for the art world. Not even for art galleries, for just for the world. Like, I like doing shows in funny places that aren't necessarily like big museums or whatever,
So can we trace any direct impact though of Alicudi in your work?
It's kind of like a monk-like place, for it's a bit of like a retreat type place where there's nothing. But I think the paintings, those pyramid paintings, I think they're like portraits of Alicudi. So, Alicudi doesn't have any roads, there's all just steps. And in the last few years, I've been doing all these works with steps.
Of course, yeah.
But it's not consciously trying to make a portrait of Alicudi, but that's what I think it is. Like, if I step back and think, well, what's that?
Well, that puts a completely different complexion on the proposal in the fruit market. You were going to do a sound piece on the Scotsman Steps in Edinburgh, outside the gallery. That couldn't happen. But the proposal now is to coat it with marble.
so each step will be a different type of marble.
Which is an Italianate idea, I suppose.
Well, I saw a lot of marble when I was in Italy, and I thought it'd be beautiful to have a floor or a staircase with kind of like all the marble you can possibly get in the whole world, you know, all different colours and.
That notwithstanding, is the majority? I mean, I'm curious about context because you say that actually you like working in places that aren't art galleries, but does the kind of cultural myth of the white cube as the space where art is made, do you think that still dominates your thinking, that as you're working on a piece or as you're working on pieces, unless it's for a particular deadline or a particular space, in the end it is the white cube that you're subconsciously locating it in?
No, definitely not. I mean, or at least I try not to. I no, not at all. I like doing shows where, you know, in places that aren't, you know, necessarily white. No, I don't know, because I'm really scared of making like sort of kind of making kind of. I just think like I just don't want to make kind of like wanky work that, you know.
Define wanky work. Give us an example, because it's funny because people use that term. And
you know, wanky would be like, it's like what I was saying about being at home. You know, if I work at home on my own, and I like spending time on my own and kind of like trying to live with things, but in essence that is wanky. You know, I'm making my own pleasure kind of thing.
So, in self-indulgent then, it would be one definition.
Well, maybe, but it's also to do, I think, you know, if you think about wanking is actually control, you know, you're like controlling your own ejaculation, you know, rather than it being, you know, something to do with someone else, you know. So the thing about that is that you're kind of controlling your own world, but it's the same as well. It's the same. It's also the same like in a family or in you know, if you think of like the art world as, you know, in general, it's like or any sort of specific field which is, you know, a sort of certain number of people that kind of get to know each other and, you know, work with each other, and it's like a kind of like a family. But I also mean a family. I'm talking about a family as well in this scenario, and the thing about that is that. Or to look at it another way, if you hang out with someone all the time, you get to know what they like, you know, and you get to know their kind of flaws and what they like. You know, you get to know how, you know, what makes them laugh and kind of, you know, and then so you start. So, that's what I think of as kind of wanky, because then it's. You know, you're not putting. It's kind of comfortable because you're not. Nothing's been. You know, there's no. It's in that scenario. No one's shouting. You know, fuck off, you wanker. You know. And because if someone shouts that really makes you think, oh, I better make sure that what I'm doing, I'm really, you know, kind of like sure about. It's like if you do things in pubs, you know, people kind of shout at you and, you know, call you a wanker. I don't know now. I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, you do.
Shit, I feel I've been talking too much.
I'm much more confused as to what wanky art is now than I was about 10 minutes ago.
I don't want to give myself away, though, in any of my answers, so I feel like I've been giving myself away. Shit.
I think you've revealed a huge amount about yourself, and I'm going to throw you to the floor, as it were, and in the quest to get you to learn more. I don't think you should go to the question. I don't think you should go to the toilet. You could go to the toilet as a kind of protest if you don't think the questions are up to it. Actually, that's a terrible thing to say, because that will put down a gauntlet. We've got about 10 minutes tops, so I think your bladder or your bowels could hold out. If you don't, give it a go. Are there questions from the floor? Just for the entertainment value of seeing Martin stay on stage would be good, wouldn't it? But has anyone got a question from the floor?
Maybe
There
we
is
can have
one.
light.
Yes, there is one.
Maybe
No, I can
light
just
would
see there's
be-
a hand up there in the middle, yeah, on the right there.
Maybe light isn't good.
I think we have to wait for the mic, yeah.
Oh, in Tim Marlow's introduction, he said that your book had almost all the works that you've produced in it. I was wondering if you could tell us which works haven't been included.
It springs to mind there's two of the works with colour drawings that aren't in it because we couldn't get photos of them.
Do you know where they are?
Yeah, they're in Germany. But we just couldn't get photos, and but in the end, you know, the exact number of pages of the book had to be pinned down, and so there's two or three, or there's a few works that were taken out, but those two colour ones, which, you know, I couldn't find photos, so they're not in it.
I was going to ask a question related to that,
sorry.
actually. I was going to ask a question related to that, which is, you said when you're making a piece of work, you've got to be able to live with it for the rest of your life. So have you made any that you haven't been able to live with? Or do you accept them?
I really regret it, you know, when I feel like I've made a mistake with something. And I made this video when I was at college. It was in my degree show, and in the video, everything was down. It was in a bar, and there was like a boy and a girl, and there were these two little objects on the bar, which were gold and silver, which were the little sculptures that I made. Which
the kind of protuberances, yeah.
I saw it was a salt and pepper set.
Yeah.
And these people can't sit down and have a drink, a cigarette, and a sandwich. And the screen, like on each side, everything, all the props kind of match up. Like, so the silver side of the screen, like the person has like white bread with cottage cheese, and on the other side they have like brown bread with cheddar cheese, and then they have, and the girl has a white cigarette, you know, with a white tip, and I always regret that the boy should have been a cigar, you know, so that it
balanced with the bread.
But I don't know why I didn't use a cigar. I used a cigarette. I was a white cigarette, but with a brown tip. So, but it shouldn't have. You know, it should have been even a brown mentholated more. You know, but so, and I should have used a cigar. But for years later, I regretted that. I still regret that.
It's in the book, though, isn't it?
I know. But it is.
Yes, I have a question. You said that when you make works of art and you feel like the public has seen it, that's when it really becomes very close to you. That's the way you want the work of art to get recognized.
I feel like I don't find out about it until it's in public. But also, I wouldn't say that I make works of art. I wouldn't say that because I think it's very difficult to say, you know, to use the word art because I don't really know what it means.
So what do you do?
I make, you know, things for people to listen to, things to listen to or look at or listen to or whatever it may be.
But you call yourself an artist?
No.
But my question was, would you ever consider making a work of art or making a piece in front of the public?
Yeah, but
perhaps you've done that already.
That is what I've been trying to work on recently.
Okay.
Yeah, but partly, yeah, that was one of the specific reasons that I made these films in the last few years. Those films are kind of are like the one of the vomiting and the shitting as well. Like, I think of them as films of people making something. So it's like trying to film the production of something, you know. And the live shows I do with the dancers and that's quite improvised. So although we have all these kind of dances, and songs, but then it's kind of all put together alive in front of the audience. So each night is different, and that's exactly for the reason the thing that you're talking about.
So the ballet piece that you did in Edinburgh, and have also worked on in London at Sadler's Wells, the studio there, that you're going to perform on stage next summer, I think you were telling me, in June.
Yeah, in June.
Will that be a more evolved work or just a different work to the former manifestation in those other two places?
It'll just be sort of different, but when we did it in Edinburgh this summer, it was different than it was before. Each performance is like trying to work on it to.
So it does become more refined or evolved in theory.
It's the later performance, the more recent performances have been like faster in the sense of it moving, less lingering.
Does it make it better for you? Are you improving it?
I'm trying to make it better. Yeah.
So you're searching for some kind of perfectibility in the sense of a new work to get better.
Aye. But the other, I think the other thing about doing things in front of people, as opposed, it's that thing. It's to do with controlling things, and if I'm on my own, then I would pick and choose perhaps what to present. But given that I increasingly feel like I don't actually know what's best, like what the best bits are of what I do. So then maybe it's better to sort of do things in front of people, because then they won't just see the good bits or what I think are the good bits. I don't. Also, recently I've been doing shows that were curated by other people, and also working with an editor on the book, and talking about it, and working with a curator.
Well, that's interesting, because you previously used to stage single works, didn't you? Broadly speaking. But so working, say, at the Fruit Market with Fiona Bradley.
Yeah.
So that's almost an act of public performance for you.
It's always it's always a kind of collaboration, just like doing something in front of an audience. Everyone, it's like everyone's in the same room, and it's Yeah.
There's another question. Yeah.
I was just going to say about that kind of public performance. That's very much like making a kind of live work is very much like performing on stage if you're in a band. So that's kind of something that you've been doing for a long time.
Right.
Do you think there's a kind of duality between the two? Are you trying to bring them together, or is it sort of, I was just interested in, it seems to me that when you perform live as a kind of singer or performer, you are kind of making that kind of completion in the same way as some of your other works are, but you're on the stage more.
That is the reason that I do those things. But I want to try and mix it up, One of the things I've been trying to work on in the ballet, which I've been doing, is in the ballet consists of like dancing, songs, and also kind of talking. Like I kind of introduce things and try and talk about them a wee bit. One of the things about that is that, and there's films in it as well, like some of the films that have been shown in galleries and that. So that, to me, that's like a chance to try and make a work that kind of has a bit of lots of bits and pieces and a bit of everything in it. And the reason I want to try and do that is because of feeling like I don't know what the best thing is to do. So that's like a chance to kind of to not do one specific thing, and you can change your mind in the middle of something. You can't, it's difficult to do a show that changes its mind, kind of thing. A show of something can look very sort of certain, whereas a live show can be maybe a bit more uncertain. The thing about the band stuff is that when you do song, they're choreographed or pre-rehearsed, songs. Whereas talking like this and is not, and I don't know what he's going to say, and it's so
You'd never have guessed this was unrehearsed. This has no relationship to anything, but it just was something I wanted. It was in my mind a few minutes ago. I think your family were Quakers. Is that right?
Yeah.
Do you have any semblance of art as a kind of religious experience? Is there a kind of parallel, do you think, in the way that people now confront art with kind of religious experience? Are you interested in any way in exploring religious experience? Do you have any religious beliefs?
No, I don't. But I do think that Quakerism was a big influence on me, and that was the other thing that my dad always said. You know, I feel like he was always saying that art and religion and music are good, and you know, but you know, but I think that Quakers were a big influence on me.
In that sense of
contemplation, because they meet once a week to sit around and not say anything, you know, and I think, you know, there's a lot to be learned from that.
Are you scared then? Sorry, do you have no fear then of nothingness or of saying nothing? Or of emptiness?
No, I am very scared of emptiness, I think. Yeah. But I think it's because I'm so scared of emptiness that I want to try to, be able to live with it. But I feel like I'm like an empty shell, basically. You know, I feel like I'm empty. And
so sometimes art can be an expression of a feeling of emptiness, or the fact that you feel you've almost got nothing to say or express. You want to express that sometimes.
I would say, I think so. Yeah. But I think it's impossible to know what you're expressing. You know, that's the thing. You know.
It's very interesting because at the very beginning of this talk, which I'm now going to bring to an end, you said that, which I thought was very disarmingly honest. So there is another.
There's one more question.
Sorry, good. Then I'll hold my fire and we'll have a question from the floor. Sorry.
Sorry, I just
apologies.
Wanted to go back, if I may, to the point that you were making about making a work that you can live with. And it seems there's an interesting dichotomy between like this element of control and lack of control that you talk about in your work. So for me, maybe I've got it wrong and maybe I've misunderstood, but surely when you make work that you can live with, you have to be very conscious all the time about what you're making. Is that something that I've misunderstood? I mean, it goes also back to the point about the point that you were making about knowing somebody and getting used to it, and then it kind of becomes like very rehearsed, and it just seems to me. And then the element about the live performance. So the live performance allows this lack of control, and then maybe the surprise to occur. Whereas when you're conscious about creating something that you can live with, surely you always have to be very conscious and have a lot of checks, and that doesn't allow that to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Just wanted to just ask whether I understood you correctly or not.
I agree with you, and I think I didn't. I think to me what you're saying is exactly right, and I think. So I try to control everything. You know, I try to, because I want to make something that's, you know, as perfect as it can be, and I try desperately to control things. You know, but in my experience of trying to do that often can kind of kill things. You know, because you can kind of overwork things. So, but I don't know how to not like. It's like I don't. So it's more a matter of like, I think I'm always trying to control things somehow, but I think that when things are out of control, that's nicer to look at least in my experience it is. So it's a matter then of I try and put myself into situations where I can't control things. That's what I'm saying about. So that's what I was saying. If I'm with one person who I know very well, to a certain extent, you know, there's kind of a certain amount of, in a way, it's a kind of controlled environment. I know they like me or something like that. You know, I feel that they love me or whatever. But if I'm in a situation like this, I'm not in control of, You know, I don't know who is there in the shadows. You know, and that's what. That's what I mean. I think is like it's a matter of like trying to put yourself in situations where it's a bit out of, you know, where you can't control things, and then try to work. You know.
But then there comes a certain sort of set of, or not necessarily a set, but there comes expectations with that. And it's interesting, I don't think you've probably ever been compared to Anthony Gormley before, but in the fourth Plinth project that he did last year in Trafalgar Square, one of the things that I think he found most difficult but most exciting was utterly, that was the whole concept of the piece, was to relinquish control. But every hour on the hour for 100 days and nights, people would do what they wanted to do. He also expressed on one or two occasions the hope that people would do certain things, and when they didn't, he said, oh, it's kind of sad they didn't, but broadly speaking, he was able to kind of step back. When you did the runners piece at Tate Britain, you kind of, in a sense, you defined your parameters quite strictly, but then you were letting go. There was a certain loss of control there. Were you disappointed or happy with, or had no view on what people actually did? Did it meet your expectations?
Well, when I was unhappy when they weren't running fast enough. I thought they had to really be sprinting, and when they weren't sprinting at top speed, I thought it wasn't as good. But that was, you know, that was, and then in the end, if they weren't sprinting, it was, that was down to a kind of organisational problem, because we didn't have enough runners at times, you know, or they were tired, or, you know, whatever. But yeah, I was disappointed if they weren't running fast enough, because
I think one of the great things about doing any event at the ICA is that conversations can always continue in the bar, and because I don't want my feet to sort of get wet, and I think Martin probably does need to have a break, I think I'll bring to an end the formal part of this evening. Martin, Germaine Greer described you in one of the essays in this book as an artist of kind of without ego, egolessness, she describes a category in your work. And actually at the beginning of the talk tonight, you were talking about how important it was for you to both express yourself and be in control or whatever. But that's, I think, one of the nice paradoxes of you. Like all artists, I'm sure you do have an ego. It's become clear. But actually, it's a very subtly manifested one. And you sometimes appear not to have an ego, which is quite a rare characteristic in an artist. So can I thank you for your egoless performance tonight. And thank you all for joining in. And let's carry on in the bar. Thanks.